Continuing with the Hilchos of HaMoed, Siman Tav Kuf Mem Gimel. We have to start by correcting a misconception that many people have. One cannot ask a non-Jew on Shabbos to do anything. There are very, very limited things that one can ask the quote Shabbos goy to do, and how to ask and so on. However, this is not only a halacha in Shabbos, it is a halacha in general. As the Torah writes, Kol melacha or davar she'asur lasos, any work or anything else that we're not allowed to do, asur lomar akum lasos. We're not allowed to ask a non-Jew to do it either. ואפילו דבר שמותר לעשות ביום טוב, even if it would be something that I'm allowed to ask the non-Jew to do on Yom Tov, כגון שקבל לבנות ביתו של ישראל מערב יום טוב בקבלנות, if I contracted with a non-Jew to build a house. Now, I haven't told him when to work. He works whenever he wants to work. And it's outside the Tchum Shabbos, so no Jew will walk by him and see, they're working on the Jew's house on Shabbos. Shemutar לבנות ביום טוב, he can build it on either Shabbos or Yom Tov, אם הוא חפץ, if he wants to. חוץ לתחום, because it's outside חוץ לתחום העיר, because it's outside the תחום of the city. וגם אין עיר אחרת בתוך תחומו, and there is no other city that is within its תחום של הבית, of the house. But HaMoed aser. Nonetheless, in HaMoed it is prohibited. Afילו chutz letchum, even if it's out there the tchum. Sharay יכולין לילך sham, because people could go there. Meaning, the reason why I am allowed to ask the non-Jews allowed to do this, I don't have to prevent him from doing it, is because no Jew will see it and say they're working on the Jews' things on Yom Tov. But if he's inside the tchum and people say, they're working on the Jews' property on Shabbos, then it's a problem and it can't be done. Hillchos. Therefore, all the halachas, we say there's a difference between whether it is within the Tchum Shabbos or outside of the Tchum Shabbos in terms of having a non-Jew work on something. The same, it would be true here. It is not true on HaMoed, because on HaMoed people are allowed to travel. People may be outside the Tchum. They'll see non-Jews working on the Jews' house, future building, whatever it is, on HaMoed, and they say they're doing the work for the Jew on HaMoed, and this is prohibited. ואפילו נבנה הבית בעשר על ידי נוכרי, even if the house is already built by the non-Jew. He built it on HaMoed. It's prohibited to do it. I was supposed to stop him, but I didn't. But he did it. It is fitting to be strict and not to enter this house. Meaning, this is a whole discussion in the Gemara, and it depends upon which Rishonim you look at as to how the halacha comes out. But something that is done be'isr, all right? The halacha is more famous on Shabbos. If I intentionally do something that's asur on Shabbos, and I know it's asur when I'm doing it, then neither I nor anyone else may benefit from this on Shabbos. Everyone agrees to that. There's a machlokas, Meir and Yehuda, whether Motzei Shabbos, it's other people may benefit, but I may never have benefit from it. All right? Can other people have benefited from it, or is everyone prohibited to have benefit from it? However, if I do a melacha on Shabbos by accident, then, again, the same machlokas. I clearly am not allowed to have any benefit at all from it on Shabbos, but other people that I certainly didn't do it for them, I didn't know it was prohibited, and so on. If there is another Jew for whom I wasn't planning, meaning I was planning on serving this food to Shimon and Reuven can't eat it. But Levi and Yehuda, who it wasn't planned for them, they, according to the machlokas, whether they could use it or not. And Motzi Shabbos, whether other people can use it, or maybe even I could use it. And there's also I don't want to get into this, but there's something called Kadesh Yasu, meaning Motzi Shabbos, it could only be used after enough time is past Motzi Shabbos to be able to have done this melacha. Meaning if it took an hour to cook, then an hour after the end of Shabbos, depending on your position, whether it's you or whether someone else, and whether it's Rabbi Yehuda or Rabbi Meir, whether someone else or you can benefit from it at that time. However, if you hold that if it was done by Isser, then you're never allowed to have benefit from it, then here too the halacha would be the same thing. That is, that never can a Jew have benefit from it, from this object. The house should never enter into it, meaning you've now created a total write-off, even though only a small percentage of it was done on Shabbos, meaning it was done on HaMoed, meaning as follows. It took 6 months to build the house. They worked on 5 days, or maybe, let's say 10 days, both HaMoeds. They worked on 10 days of HaMoed, 9 days of HaMoed, something like that. So that is clearly not a significant amount, but because Jews were able to say, they're working on the Jew's house, Isser, they would have been able to see this happening. Therefore, the whole thing becomes prohibited, and one should be machmer on this, as the Torah. And the Beis Yosef explains, because it's this whole machlokas as to this. And he says someone that is a bal nefesh, someone that is careful with how he performs mitzvahs, should accept the entire loss, even though there are opinions by which it would be allowed. When are we talking about? In a house that's attached. And again, I will go back to Hilchos Shabbos. If I take something to the cleaners, Erev Shabbos, Thursday, whatever, and I am going to pick it up later, meaning if I take it Thursday or Wednesday, and even if I would pick it up Motzi Shabbos or Sunday, there was enough time for him to have done the cleaning work before Shabbos. If he decides to do it on Shabbos, that's his business, and no one looking at this knows it's my garment versus someone else's garment. So therefore, I'm allowed to do that. However, if I go to the cleaners half an hour before closing time Friday afternoon, and I say it's rush, I need it Sunday morning as soon as they open, then I have not given them the possibility to do this work any other time than Shabbos, and that is prohibited. As long as they have enough time either before Shabbos or after Shabbos to do this work, then it would be mutter. Again, like I said, you can't say, well, if they wanted to, they could come in at 8 p.m. and have it done by 1 a.m. Then that's not reasonable. Meaning, if in the normal working time, their normal working hours, they could finish this before your scheduled pickup time, between the time you bring it and the time you're going to pick it up, then if they decide to do it on Shabbos, that's their business, it's not our business. So that's the halach on Shabbos. If it's something that's disconnected from the ground and isn't immediately identifiable as belonging to someone. However, if you have something that's unique, you have let us say you have a purple Rolls Royce, the only purple Rolls Royce in the city. Everyone knows this is Shimon's Rolls Royce, and you take it into the mechanic and he's working on Shabbos. No, because people can see it's Shimon's car, right? They walk by and they go, that's Shimon's car. When the dry cleaner is working on something, no one knows whose thing he's working on, whether they can see it at all. So the tour begins, Aval betalush. But if something is disconnected from the ground, shnasin lo melacha kodem HaMoed b'kablanis, I make an agreement with him. I'm paying so much for the work. I'm not paying by hour. By the way, if I'm paying for the hour of his work, then it's a problem because I'm paying for him to work on Shabbos. Like that wouldn't be allowed. But he's going to get $12, $20, $500, whatever the agreed upon price is to do this piece of work. And I bring it to him before Yom Tov, and he's going to do it in his house. Mutter, then it's mutter. Because again, no one seeing it will say the non-Jew is doing my work. That's why if it's outside of the Tachum on Shabbos or Yom Tov, where no Jew can see it being done, therefore he's allowed to work on it on Shabbos or Yom Tov and not on HaMoed, where someone can come by and see it. Someone can come by and see it and identify it as this belongs to this Jew's, then that's the problem. Mutter litein la nachri melacha b'kablanos or b'schir yom shiaseh achar HaMoed. I'm also on HaMoed allowed to contract with him to do work, whether it's kablanos, whether it's I'm paying him by the job or I'm paying him by the hour a day, to do after Yom Tov. As long as I don't make the calculations, meaning I'm paying him per pound of laundry that he's doing, or I'm paying him per foot of lumber that he's finishing for me, or something like that. As long as I don't measure it out before Yom Tov, we can agree on the price per board foot. For instance, if I'm having him turn my logs into lumber, we can agree on the price, but we can't measure it out before Yom Tov to see what the bill is going to be. But I can make the contract with him, and the specification is he's to do it after Yom Tov. Again, the halacha would be whether I have to stop him or not, whether someone could see it and identify it as mine. Meaning, as long as they couldn't identify it as being mine object, and it's kablanos, it's he's getting paid for the job, not for the hour of work, then if he takes it to his house and does it on his own, even though I told him to do it after Yom Tov, I don't have to say, wait a second, you're doing it now in Chol, you can't do it now. No, it doesn't. At that point, it doesn't matter. But I am supposed to say initially, this is a job for you to do after our holiday is over. Anyway, this is, when you understand this halacha, it's much easier to go back and reform how we think about the halachas of having a non-Jew do something for us on Shabbos. I'd like to add one other note, by the way. We often have janitors and shuls in America where the janitor doesn't speak English very well, or the assistant janitors and so on, they don't speak English very well. And people say, well, if you hint to him, it's mutter. This may or may not be true. But it has to be something that he views as a hint, meaning when you tell someone who barely speaks English, it's dark in this room, what he understands instantly is to turn on the light. That's not a hint anymore. It's a direct statement to him. Also, you have to think whether the conditions are met to be able to ask the non-Jew, meaning it has to be l'tzarich rabim or l'tzarich mitzvah. It has to be impossible to do otherwise. There are tshuvas in the Rishonim, for instance, about a mikveh that has one lamp lit, but people would really prefer there be another lamp lit, so they are more than one other lamp lit, so that they can see better when they're going to the mikveh Leil Shabbos, the women. So almost everyone says that even though it's l'tzorech mitzvah, the woman's tevilah, nonetheless, since there's enough light to be able to do this, even though it's not as much light as I normally want, I can't ask the non-Jew to do it. Whereas if there were all the lamps were out for whatever reason, and it would be impossible for the woman to immerse, then everyone agreed that I can at least hint to a non-Jew to light the lamps, and that would be mutter. Again, you have to see if you're in a room and there are windows, and it's Shabbos afternoon, and there's really enough light to daven mincha. Although, it'd be nicer if all the lights were on. It's better, certainly better, maybe not to ask a non-Jew to light the lights, because I can perform the mitzvah as it is. This is something that in fact I don't need. So when thinking about these things, it's very important to be aware of what the halachas are, and to be aware that in general, one is not allowed to ask a non-Jew to do something that we ourselves are not allowed to do. And everyone should have a wonderful day.